Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Once again, we will talk about harmonic resonance and also prosperity, today's topic. To be able to solve problems of prosperity, such as relationships, health, and all others, it is necessary to understand the issue of paradigm. As long as we are living in Newton's paradigm, from 300 or 400 years ago, the problems will persist. There is no solution if we do not change the paradigm. But, to do this, we need to understand some things, the experiences of quantum mechanics. 70, 80 years of experiences, all the existing electronic paraphernalia works on the discoveries of quantum mechanics. There would be no electronics if the discoveries of physicists did not work. But, this knowledge is restricted only to the military and telecommunications, radio and television areas. It is difficult to reach others. Until humanity makes this leap, the problems will only increase. The fundamental experience of quantum mechanics is the double slit. Everything is a wave and everything is a particle. You see, this experiment was carried out on planet Earth in 1805, 205 years ago. Will it take another 200 years for this knowledge to be incorporated into the masses? For the first time, an electron was sent through two slits, sometimes it goes through one slit, sometimes through two. We are the ones who choose how we want the electron to behave. It is a particle and a wave at the same time. So, everything is a particle and everything is a wave at the same time. Until this is understood, it will be very difficult to make changes. We are accustomed to the brainwashing we received in school, which teaches that the universe is just that, solid, chemical. If everything is solid, it is logical that everything is separate, everyone is separate from everyone else. This conception is what generates all the problems of wars, economic problems, and everything else. Understand that the simple fact of accepting that a wave exists, that everything can be treated as chemistry or physics, as a particle or as a wave, makes a fundamental difference. This is the critical point, it is the basis of the universe, everything is vibration. If a person doesn't understand, how can they achieve better results? Every health problem, in particular, is conditioned by this materialistic worldview, the biomolecular vision. Why can't everything be treated as a wave? Change would be gigantic. The implications of a paradigm shift are brutal, it would change an entire civilization. That's why there are so many resistances to understanding something that everyone uses every day. In fact, if someone doesn't accept this, they should throw their cell phone in the trash. They shouldn't watch television, listen to the radio, or use anything electronic anymore. Everyone has a cell phone, but they don't accept that the universe is made of waves. Everything is a wave. This leads to a series of implications. If everything is a wave, then everyone is a wave, everything is made of atoms. It's extremely important for humanity to understand this knowledge. But do you have any idea how many people don't know that atoms exist? It's huge, gigantic. They have no idea how reality is made. So, imagine how these people can navigate the universe. It's as if they had a television with a remote control with 100 buttons, written in Korean, and no manual. What do? They turn the power on and off, they go up and down the channels, and they turn the sound up and down. That's what they do. They go through life having all sorts of problems, when they could have practically solved everything, because they don't understand how this enormous system works, at a distance of at least 93 billion light-years from the observable universe. The reality is this: atomic substance. Everything needs to have atomic substance. The problem is, in order for people to understand reality, stories are told, which are metaphors. And people want to interpret the metaphor strictly, seriously, but it shouldn't be like that. A little story was told, presenting a lesson, to understand what the universe is like. That was valid 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. But nowadays, after the atomic bomb was made, it is no longer possible to live with little stories, as is still done all over the world. People are guided by stories, metaphors, parables, analogies, tales. They are stories, they are ways of telling a reality, but very romanticized. It is no longer possible to live like this. Consider the issue that exists today, between the Middle East and the West. It is due to the worldview. The West has a worldview that has nothing to do with quantum mechanics. In the East, although it is a different pole, the vision is basically the same, and it also has nothing to do with quantum mechanics. They based their work on Newton's physics, from 400 years ago, and the problem persists. But now they no longer use clubs or arrows, each side can have its own firecrackers. And it is all due to the worldview, because they have not incorporated the idea that everything can be treated as a particle or a wave. It seems trivial, but it is not. It is at the root of humanity's concept of reality today. Stories are important for a 2-, 3-, 4-, or 5-year-old child. But an adult of 18, 20, 30, 40, or 80 years old continues to live his life with the little story that was told to him when he was 3 years old. And all this knowledge that has been discovered, that has been proven in the laboratory, is it mathematics? What do you do with it? Throw it in the trash, sweep it under the carpet? For example, the case of the Higgs boson that they are studying in Geneva. What is this Higgs boson? It is the first time that mass has appeared in the universe. Below everything, there is a primordial ocean of energy, called the quantum vacuum. If we put the forehead of this friend of ours, pointing to a person in the audience, under an electron microscope, what will happen? We will see cells, molecules, atoms, quarks. And then? Either we see strings, superstrings, or we find the Higgs boson, depending on the current we are following. Any of them will do, but what comes next? There is the quantum vacuum, which is an ocean of potential and infinite energy. But it is pure wave. It has no mass. Mass is what we have here, chair, floor, us, human beings. What is mass? It is simply a wave that is vibrating less and can be manipulated. The vibration of the quantum vacuum is extremely high, it is impossible to have any interaction in it. It is just one thing. In order to have an exchange, to exchange information, there must be individuation. For this to happen, the speed of the quantum vacuum must be reduced a little, everything is transformation. What emerges first from the quantum vacuum? That's a way of speaking, could be the Higgs boson or it could be the string. It doesn't matter, it's the same thing. Do you understand? The Higgs boson is the first thing in the universe that has mass. If its speed is reduced a little, it becomes a quark, if it is reduced even further, 3/4 of it becomes a proton, which vibrates less. Attached to it is the neutron, and around it the electron. With that, it vibrates less, it has a frequency, which can be measured in hertz. If you put several atoms together, you have molecules, which vibrate even less. If you put several molecules together, you get to the organs, liver, kidney, lung, heart, and putting everything together you form a human being, vibrating less. Then you get to the point where we are here. How much? 12, 15, 20 hertz, cycles per second. Each one of you, your brain, is vibrating like this. In order to be able to talk, we need to go from 15 trillion times per second, which is how much the atom vibrates, to 20 per second, or 15, or 12, which is how we vibrate. Consider, in order to be able to exchange this information, how much we had to reduce the vibration. What is this here? With his right hand, he feels his left hand, this mass. It is just an organization system, it is pure information. It was organized in levels, until it had this configuration. But, if we penetrate the chair, him, points to someone in the audience, the floor, the oxygen that surrounds us, everything, deep down, what will we find? The quantum vacuum. A single energy. What do physicists say? That in the quantum world, at the quantum level, there is no difference, we are one thing. A single vibration. Very good. Everything that is an electromagnetic field is pure information, right? This has not been well understood, yet. Look closely. Proton, neutron, brings both hands together in the center of the chest, with closed fists, there is a strong nuclear force that keeps them stuck together. And a weak nuclear force, the electron, with the right hand, reproduces an ellipse around the left. When a proton, a positive charge, joins with an electron, a negative charge, you have a magnet, an electromagnetic field. And, permeating all of this, there is gravity. Any of these forces that can be manipulated represents extreme power. Quantum mechanics is a problem because, if we have the knowledge to separate the proton from the neutron, what do we have? An atomic bomb. The atomic bomb does nothing more than release the energy of the strong nuclear force. The Hiroshima bomb was about 14% efficient. It killed 100,000 people. Imagine if it had been 100% efficient. The detonation was not able to remove all the neutrons, separate the neutrons and the protons. But nothing was created there, only the force that was already inside was released. The strong force. If we know how to manipulate the weak force, electromagnetism or gravity, the result, in terms of power, is the same. That is why everyone is terrified of people studying chemistry, physics and biology. There is a whole policy to prevent certain races from studying chemistry, physics and biology in the West. Why? Because science is science. Whoever studies it discovers it. There is no metaphor, it either is or it is not. This means that everyone runs the risk of knowledge being available to everyone. This whole battle that you can see in the news exists because those who have the power to enrich uranium, for example, do not want to give it up to anyone else. So, is knowledge power? Always. And if one person has the knowledge? And what about the other? What do those who have already acquired knowledge, who have already gotten ahead, try to do? They try to prevent everyone else from obtaining this knowledge. Remember? Knowledge is power. That is why there are so many questions about the documentary, Who Are We? All the scientists and PhDs in the film were criticized so badly. Why? What is the reason for so much opposition to physicists, doctors, and neurologists? What is the problem with understanding that the electron, or the photon, passes through two slits, depending on the observer's choice? And if the observer wants a delayed effect, that also happens. After the electron has passed through a slit, it can be closed. Before it reaches the back of the sensor, we can choose whether we want one slit or two. If there is one slit, it passes as a particle, if there are two, it passes as a wave. Now, imagine, after it has passed, we choose what we want. What happens? What does the sensor show? That it came back and behaved as we wanted. It is called the retarded effect. This is the experiment that was done. See how far quantum mechanics goes. They talk about the oddities of quantum mechanics. But this oddity is what the universe is like. So, is the universe weird? It may be, in human terms, in terms of human logical reasoning. But, in practice, that's how the universe is. But if a person escapes from reality, how is he classified in psychology, in psychiatry? Depending on the distance, he is neurotic, psychotic, schizophrenic. Isn't that how he is classified? The further away from reality one is, the more mentally ill one is. Imagine humanity as a whole, with the exception of a handful. How can one classify humanity as a whole, which refuses to accept that reality is atomic and that everything works like a wave? Think about it. That's why problems exist and get worse, as you can see. They get worse and worse, because reality is not accepted. And we have to accept it, whether we like it or not, because if we don't, it's simple, we'll somatize. Those who don't understand this won't understand how to navigate the world. When you're 20, it's easy, but in the end, how many divorces, separations, bankruptcies, illnesses, psychosomatizations will there be? All of this is the result of not understanding how the world works. Those who understand will know how to interact. The implications are enormous for those who refuse to understand quantum mechanics. Let's talk about another experiment. A LAN aspect, for example. The spin of a particle is correlated with another. Two particles are brought together and then separated. They each go in a different direction. There is instantaneous communication between these particles. In 1982, this experiment showed this. It's faster than the speed of light. When you move the spin of one, the other immediately follows. The two particles are correlated all the time. What does this mean? There is a way for one particle to know what's happening to the other. There was no time for a signal to be sent from one to the other. But they become correlated, instantly. Very good. What do physicists say? That there is non-local communication. Period, and the page is turned. That's easy, isn't it? You don't explain it, you give it any name. Where did that electron go? As Fred Alan Wolf says at the beginning of the documentary, who are we? Did it go to a non-local universe? You can give it any name, right? Why does it have to be non-local? So the local is this one, pointing to the room where they are, and the other one is the non-local? So, we already have two. And what about the 1956 theory? Of the many worlds of quantum mechanics, they ended that physicist's career because he mathematically said that this existed. More than 50 years later, they are studying it again. The question persists. Where does the virtual particle that appears in this universe come from? This happens all the time in quantum mechanics. And what about quantum tunneling, in which the electron comes through the wall to the socket and jumps from the wall terminal to the pin? It disappears there and appears here. It is called quantum tunneling, the so-called quantum leap. It does not follow this path, draws a line in the air with a finger, it is here, points to a certain point in the air, disappears, appears here, points to a place a little higher than the previous one, in the air. And the question of the dummy experiment, for example. It is in various types of documents, scattered in various books, and has not yet been brought together in a single book. How is it done? In a laboratory, a doll is correlated with a person, who holds the doll's material in his hand. This doll stays here in the room, and the person goes to another room, where there is a Faraday chamber, which leaves him electromagnetically isolated. An experimenter with a doll, which has a head, torso, limbs, tickles his shoulder. At the same time, the correlated person, who is in the other room, with devices measuring his brain's potential for evocation, feels the effect, despite being isolated in a Faraday chamber. Thus, the correlation is proven. The same happens with lovers. Each one goes to a different room. A flash of light is projected on one of them. The other reacts immediately, his brain reacts in the same way, in phase, because the two are correlated. If one was touched and made a spike like this, with a finger, he draws a growing vertical line in the air, the other also makes a spike, instantly. See, there are experiments, in various forms, both in psychology and physics, showing that another reality exists. This is what is commonly known as voodoo, which consists of provoking reactions in a person through a doll, do you think it doesn't exist? Now it has been proven, in the laboratory, that voodoo exists. In the same way that the experimenter tickled the shoulder, he could have pricked the doll with a needle. Any of these actions would have had the same effect on the related person. Do you understand why quantum mechanics is a problem? That it is possible to understand that there is communication at a distance without the emission of a signal? There is also the random number generator experiment. It is a computer program that randomly rotates numbers and changes depending on a group mind, an unconscious mind, when many people are emotionally focused on a certain thing. For example, in the case of September 11th, this observation was made: there were about 50 of these sensors around the world, a few seconds, 3 seconds, if I am not mistaken, before the first plane hit the tower, there was a spike in the random number generators. All over the world. This means that people, 3 seconds before, had access to what was going to happen. They accessed the future 3 seconds before. We all do this. This is intuition, premonition. Another experiment. With a random generator, a file of zeros and ones is recorded, 0101. The computer will record 50% of zeros and 50% of ones, it cannot be any other way. Let's suppose that this file was recorded in February, and no one looked to check the quantities. As happened in the case of Schrödinger's wave function collapse. Remember Schrödinger's cat? The cat is in a box, and until the observer checks it, he doesn't know if it's alive or dead. The same thing happened with this experiment. After about 6 months of the file being recorded and no one checking it, it was shown to a person, but before that, they were asked, do you want more zeros or more ones in this file? They answered, more zeros. The file was opened, note well, 6 months later, and do you know the result? It gave 59% of zeros and 41% of ones. How is that possible? The person changed a fact that occurred 6 months earlier, that is, the recording of 50% of zeros and 50% of ones. This means that, before the result was observed, there were infinite possibilities. Imagine the following situation: in a record company, a machine records music CDs, but no one observes what was recorded. These CDs are sent to a store, without a label. A customer comes in and asks for a Javan CD. The salesman takes one of those unlabeled CDs from a stack, sticks a label on it that says, Javan, and gives it to the customer. When he gets home, he plays it. What will play? Javan. While the CD had not been played, the possibilities were endless. See what this implies. When the first observer looks, the wave function collapses, then, he fixes that reality. There is an experiment called the Zeno effect, which is critical for us. Atomic decay happens all the time. Why? Because the atom moves all the time, it loses energy. What is called a half-life occurs. Plutonium has a half-life of, I think, 24,000 years. It takes a long time for it to lose energy. Theoretically, it is impossible to stop atomic decay. However, if the observer focuses his attention on the atom, he can stop atomic decay. It is called the Zeno effect. The atom remains still. However, if the observer takes his focus away, it starts to vibrate again, returning to its normal half-life. Imagine this in practical life. Do you remember when they say, think about what you want, visualize it, and then let it go, so that it can come? As long as you keep focusing on the result, it will not come. This is the Zeno effect. This is why you cannot keep thinking about the car and waiting in the garage, because it will not appear. As long as you are focusing, the phenomenon will not manifest itself. Another rule of the universe is electromagnetism. Everything that is sent out, comes back. Each person is a radio station all the time. Imagine the following. It is the simplest thing to do to get results. Change the wave you are emitting, because this wave has to come back. Inevitably, all the time, people attract what they emanate. A person who has debts to pay becomes worried, thinking day and night about debt. Guess what happens? The debt increases, because if it emanates debt, debt comes back. What are you sending? Need? It comes back need. The wave you emit is X hertz, and that is exactly what comes back to you. Otherwise, we wouldn't listen to the radio, we wouldn't watch television. You would tune in to 94.7 on Antenna 1 and listen to CBN. Is that possible? No, 94.7 is Antenna 1, 90.5 is CBN. But that is what humanity tries to do all the time, because it doesn't understand that what it sends out, inevitably comes back. So, those who worry about paying their debts will have even more debts. Worrying about unemployment will attract more unemployment. Those who feel needy will have more need, those who are sick will have more illness. The opposite must be done. What do you need to pay your debts? Money. So, you need to think about earning money. By taking your focus off your debt, you lose focus on the Zeno effect, which has paralyzed your life with debt. The person cannot pay because they have focused on the debt with its wave-like collapse. It is necessary to reverse everything. Think about health, money, prosperity, good relationships. You cannot try to run away, thinking, I don't want it, and adding something bad. What will happen? You will attract exactly that bad addition. What do I hear every day? N times, the same pattern from people. Why? Because what people say will always come back. It is obvious. But people cannot apply it, because they do not understand that everything works like a wave. It would be enough to understand that, if you send it, it will come back, and that all the problems arising from the stories told to everyone since childhood, thousands of years ago, would be solved. By reading the story and analyzing it in the light of quantum mechanics, you understand everything, it explains everything. Everything that exists can be explained by understanding quantum mechanics. But, whoever understands this has an astronomical power. It is manifestation. Remember? We create our own reality. It is Schrödinger's wave function collapse. That is why we create. Why does the observer affect the behavior of the electron? There is only one explanation. Because the substance of everything that exists is consciousness, pure consciousness. The entire universe is pure consciousness and we are part of it. That is why we can manifest this reality. But, we are free to manifest whatever we want. We can manifest poverty, illness, accidents, misery, unemployment, etc., as we can manifest the opposite.